It's 4 o'clock. Good afternoon. Helen Zaremus with ABC News. The federal government is dumping its controversial changes to the Racial Discrimination Act. The government had proposed lifting the ban on offending, insulting or humiliating people based on race. The Prime Minister Tony Abbott says the proposed changes to the Racial Discrimination Act were complicating talks with the Muslim community about counter-terrorism.
This is a call that I have made. It is, if you like, a leadership call that I have made after discussion with the Cabinet today. In the end, leadership is about preserving national unity.
The federal government will add another $630 million to security agencies involved in counter-terrorism. The money will go to agencies like the Federal Police, ASIO, ASIS and Customs. The Attorney-General, George Brandis, says the government will also try to stop people from fighting in overseas conflicts.
So that a person who travels to a designated locality commits an offence and will have to explain that the purpose of their travel to that designated locality was for humanitarian purposes, family purposes or other innocuous purposes.
A 3-day ceasefire has started in Gaza and Israeli troops are withdrawing from the territory. Middle East correspondent Hayden Cooper reports from Gaza City.
It's the latest of several attempts to end this war that's been going for 4 weeks and killed 1,900 Palestinians and 64 Israeli soldiers. The truce was brokered in Cairo, where all sides have agreed to stop fighting and hold discussions on a permanent agreement. Israel was expected to keep its soldiers in parts of Gaza while the talks are held, but they've now announced the troops will move back to the border. It suggests Israeli authorities believe their mission is accomplished. Hayden Cooper, ABC News, Gaza.
About 2,000 people have attended a commemorative service at Victoria's Point Nepean, where the first shot of World War I was fired 100 years ago today. More from Guy Stainer.
Just hours after the declaration of war in 1914, a German merchant ship was trying to flee Port Phillip when a cannon at Point Nepean fired a shot across its bow. At 12:45 this afternoon, another cannon was fired at Point Nepean, precisely 100 years since the first shot of World War I.
100 years ago today.
Descendants of the gunners involved in the original gunfire laid wreaths at the service held at the old quarantine station at Point Nepean. Guy Stainer, ABC News, Portsea.
The Reserve Bank's kept Australia's official interest rate on hold. The RBA board has again decided 2.5% is the appropriate rate. It's the longest stint without a change in more than 8 years at 13 consecutive months. RBA Governor Glenn Stevens has noted continuing expectations of below-trend growth and says inflation should remain within the bank's target band. But CommSec Chief Economist Craig James says the statement is almost identical to that issued last month.
I think it's now becoming crystal clear that the Reserve Bank doesn't want ordinary consumers, ordinary businesses worried about interest rates. There's little change in the wording of the statement, and it's very clear from the Reserve Bank that it's not going to be touching rates for quite a number of months yet.
The Premier's defended the actions he's taken to stamp out corruption, a day before the ICAC resumes its inquiry into alleged Liberal Party slush funds and donations for favours. The opposition's used question time to accuse Mike Baird of dragging his feet on reforms to clean up politics. Labor says Mr Baird should adopt its new policy of banning lobbyists from meeting with ministers, their staff and departments. But Mr Baird says he won't be lectured to about corruption by the opposition.
There's a range of things we've done. We have appointed the Electoral Commissioner as an independent regulator. We've got an ethics standard for all meetings that happen, scheduled meetings. We're happy to publish our diaries. We're happy to do that. We have also happily said that we need to look at our house, whether it be Simon's, whether it be Kerry Schott, whether it be John Fay. We are taking action on this side of the house and we will continue to take action.
And Waratahs halfback Nick Phipps hopes New South Wales maiden Super Rugby title will boost the Wallabies' chances against New Zealand. Waratahs have celebrated their historic victory over 7-time champions the Crusaders with a parade in Sydney. To the weather, the chance of some showers over the northern inland, otherwise fine everywhere across the state. Sydney tomorrow sunny with a top of 20. Right now, 16 degrees. I'm Helen Zaremus, ABC News.
Across New South Wales, you're with John Morrison on Statewide Drive.
All right, listen up. And good afternoon and welcome to Statewide Drive. Great to have your company this afternoon on this Tuesday afternoon on a day when the Reserve Bank, as you heard there in our 4 o'clock news, has again decided to leave interest rates on hold. The cash rate has now stood at a record low of 2.5% for 12 months, which is the longest unchanged period the rates have been held down since 2006. It's also a day that Britain marks the occasion of the start of the First World War, and there was an official ceremony in Portsea in Victoria today to mark the first shots fired in the war, which was not by a European protagonist, but by an Australian gun crew. About 1,000 people attended the ceremony today, where the story of the first battle action of the war was recounted.
The shell roared through the air and past the ship at 1,000 miles an hour. It threw up a towering column of water that cascaded down the bridge of the ship. It was both a precise warning and a dire threat.
We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. I'll play some more from that address today. And fascinating to hear that story. It's been a long time since I'd heard it, but it recounts that action, which was officially the first shot fired in the war. And news breaking right now, too, that John Cartwright is quitting as coach of the Gold Coast Titans. The club will hold a press conference right about now to announce his decision. Cartwright was appointed as coach of the Titans in 2007 after a successful playing career at Penrith. He was halfway into a 5-year contract, but has been under increasing pressure, continued by poor performances by the side. It's expected that he'll make that announcement within minutes. Coming up on the show today, changes to the bail laws have attracted criticisms from the legal profession. We'll find out why they aren't happy with the laws that have been changed after just 6 weeks. A book on the Blue Mountains fire has been released today as well, and we'll look at that. And the trial of Robert Gee gets underway in Sydney as well today, with Jamel Weld joining us after 5 o'clock. As always, you can get in touch with us if you'd like to join us. 1300 02 9994 is our phone number, 1300 02 9994. Or if you'd like to text 0467 922 684. And after 5:30, but before then, you might have some thoughts about this too. How would your kids, how would you react if you were given a typewriter to use? Sounds strange for people who spent many of their lives working with them, but how would you react? How would you go? Would you know what to do? Typewriter was given to some kids early, and they were asked how it works.
How does it work?
I actually really don't know. Let's explore. I think you put a piece of paper in there and then or does it provide paper? I don't know.
I don't know. Do you have some great memories of using a typewriter? Remember some of the good things about them? What were some of the bad things? Send them on through 0467 922 684. We'll talk about that later in the program. But always good to get your thoughts on those sorts of things. Do you remember using one? What were they about? We used to use them in here once when we first came over to Ultimo. We had them for a while. Tell you what, about deadline, it got very, very noisy in the office, I can tell you, as people thumped away on typewriters. We don't use them anymore. Well, some people did. But we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. If you've got some fond memories of typewriters or some bad memories of typewriters, send them on through 0467 922 684. I'm not entirely sure Nikki Sinclair will even know what a typewriter is, but she's with us on the line this afternoon. Nikki, good afternoon.
Hey there, John. I do know what one is.
Did you ever use one, Nikki?
All the time.
You did you?
I used to love using it.
Is that right? The clatter of the typewriter, always good fun.
It always was. And when, it made the little ding and you had to go back.
Did too. Oh, you're far more familiar than I thought.
Underestimated me, John.
I did indeed. I should never do that. I should have learnt by now, shouldn't I?
Not when it comes to typewriters, no.
Nikki, what's happening on the roads today?
John, a few incidents to tell you about. We've got one northbound lane closed on the Pacific Highway in Bangalow on the north coast. That's due to a car and truck accident just past Sunnycrest Lane. Southbound traffic's also affected there. Traffic's very heavy in both directions, so allow plenty of extra travel time and expect delays if you are heading through that area. And one westbound lane's closed on Masters Road at Drummond Street in Spring Hill in the Illawarra. That's because a semi-trailer's broken down in the right right turn lane there. Traffic crews are on their way to the site, so just keep an eye out for that and exercise caution. If you do need any more information, head to livetraffic.com, or you can always call 132 701 as well.
Thanks very much. And Nikki, back with us in 1 hour's time. It's just on 10 minutes past 4 on Statewide Drive.
Nightlife.
Hi, Tony Delroy. Have you ever thought about where you're putting your savings? Would you be surprised if your super funds are investing in tobacco, uranium mining or junk food? Tonight we're talking about the history of ethical investing in Australia. We'll find out how you can start to invest in this growing sector.
Invest some time on Nightlife. Weeknights from 10 on ABC New South Wales.
Yeah, and you're on ABC Statewide Drive. Now, the New South Wales Government has bowed to popular pressure and made changes to the state's bail laws just 6 weeks after introducing them. Now, despite the changes to the laws being part of a process involving some 2 years of consultation with all segments of the legal profession, a number of high-profile cases and loud commentary on the failure of the laws has resulted in these changes. Now, they were made by the former Labor Attorney-General, John Hatzistakos, who has had to defend his decision today. His review of the controversial new bail laws in New South Wales have attracted criticisms from senior members of the legal community as well. Thought we'd find out more about this with Pauline Wright, the chair of the Criminal Law Committee with the Law Society of New South Wales. And Pauline Wright joins me on the line this afternoon. Pauline, good afternoon. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, John.
Not necessarily happy with the changes. Tell me first of all about the process before these changes were made.
Well, basically, there was a review by the New South Wales Law Reform Commission, which took about 2 years, and it was broadly consultative. It went right across the spectrum of stakeholders in the justice system, including victims groups, the police, the public defenders, the Bar Association, the Law Society of New South Wales. All sorts of people were consulted in that over a period of about 2 years. So it was a very comprehensive review of the old bail laws, which had become overly complicated over the years and were basically the old bail laws had arisen because of knee-jerk reactions from time to time and hodgepodge amendment. So they needed review.
Mm-hmm. Well, just on that review, what was the main fault with them?
Well, it was overly complex, and it basically introduced a whole system of presumptions against bail, on different sorts of presumptions based on the type of offence that the person had committed, rather than focusing on the risk that any particular individual person accused of a crime might actually pose to the community. So the recommendations and what actually came through with the Bail Act that was introduced and commenced in May this year was a system that was about what risk the accused person actually posed to the community. Now, what's happened? That Act had about 5.5 weeks to operate when this review was announced. So it hadn't even had a chance to work. People are saying the new Bail Act had failed. Well, that's just not true. There's no indication that the Bail Act had failed at all. In fact, the Supreme Court overturned one decision about bail that the community expressed its concern over. So the system clearly was working quite well. The Supreme Court did what it's meant to do on appeal and put right a decision of a lower court that was not consistent with the law as it was intended. So that new law that took about 2 years to come about and that was passed through Parliament with the support of all sides of politics, there are now amendments being proposed to it after a matter of a review over a few weeks by one man.
It seems an odd type of review situation, but let's go back to the definition of fail. What was the definition of fail? How is it described as having failed? This is the new bail laws that have resulted in these changes. Are you clear on what that definition of failure was?
Well, no, I'm not. I don't see that they have failed. I reject that they have. I think that the system that has been in place since the beginning of May has actually shown itself to work.
Well, do you understand the definition of fail from Mike Baird's point of view?
I think that the government's perception, perhaps, of whether it's failed or not is failed in the perception of the community, which has been shaped by, I think, sensationalist headlines in the popular media.
Were there a number of high-profile cases where someone has got bail that perhaps should not have, in your view?
There were 2 or 3 decisions that were controversial in the media, but the one that was one of those controversial ones, the Supreme Court actually overturned. And if you read the decision in the other ones, you would, instead of the headlines, you would probably agree that the decisions were not incorrect in those cases, that individuals didn't pose an undue risk to the community.
If the Supreme Court, in fact, had overturned one of the decisions, does it not suggest then that there was a problem with the bail laws as they stood?
No, because if you looked under the old bail laws, bail decisions are overturned all the time. Bail decisions are made by police as well as local courts. So it's not just courts that make these decisions. And when there's a new piece of legislation, you have to expect that it will take time before people understand what's required of them in the process. And the way that our system works is if a decision is made in a local court or in a police station, then the higher court will be able to consider that if one of the parties appeals. And that's exactly what did happen.
Pauline Wright is my guest this afternoon, the chair of the Criminal Law Committee with the Law Society of New South Wales. Pauline Wright, many people will be asking the bottom line question: were some people who are facing charges getting bail far too easily?
No, absolutely not. Where somebody posed an unacceptable risk to the community in terms of whether they were going to be a danger to the community, whether they were a flight risk, whether they might commit a serious offence while they were on bail, those sorts of risk factors, where they were an unacceptable risk to the community, then they would not be granted bail under the current law.
But as a former lawyer and, in fact, a former State Attorney General, John Hatzisteros would have appreciated the principles of law, and why has he seen it necessary to change them then?
Look, I don't know. All I can look at is his individual history, and he was the Attorney General in the former government. I don't have any criticism of him as a human being whatsoever. He has a particular view on criminal justice issues. And indeed, his government brought in some of the changes to the old system of bail that overly complicated it by introducing lots of presumptions and complicating factors in it. So I don't know whether those were his decisions or his cabinet's decisions, but that's the history of the matter. Now, my criticism is not of him as a person, it is the process. One person's review of an act is never going to be as comprehensive, thorough and proper as a whole team of experts who've broadly consulted, such as the New South Wales Law Reform Commission did over a period of 2 years.
One of our text messages that just come through, Linda and Paul Macquarie writes, good on the government for actually listening to what the people want. They should do it always. Is there a feeling within the community that that is the tighter laws are what the community does want?
What the community is not probably seeing, that what the community is getting is perceptions based on media reports. They're not actually getting the reality of what's happening. The more people know of the reality of what happens in courts, the more they think that the courts get it right. The research and statistics show that when people are surveyed after being involved in the court system, they tend to agree with what happens in the courts. When they don't know and they're only reading newspaper reports, then they think it's wrong.
A couple of more texts have come through on this very topic too, and if you'd like to send one through, 0467 922 684. Peter writes, bail laws may not have failed the lawyers but failed the people. That's one thought on there. The other is, ask the police who are dealing with the new bail laws, you'll get the real answer. It does suggest two different points of view again, Pauline, right?
Look, I think that the police will find once they were used to the new bail laws, they were much more simple to use than the previous bail laws. There's no doubt about that. That very complex set of presumptions was very hard for the police to look at and to operate. Under the new system, as soon as they get used to it, they would be absolutely fine in doing it. I have a great deal of respect for our police, and I know that with this form of bail, looking at particular risk of the particular individual, they'll be very good at doing it. It's just a matter of them getting used to a new system. But it needed to have time to work. This is a premature thing.
Do you believe that we may need to go through another change or alteration to the bail laws again, given these changes?
Well, the change that I'd like to see happen would be after the fulsome review of the new Bail Act, would be to remove the idea that an accused person should be showing cause why they should remain at liberty. I think the main concern that lawyers have got about this, the Hatzisteros review, is that based on a certain type of category of offence rather than the actual risk of the offender, certain people are going to have to bear the onus of proving that they should be allowed to remain free. That goes against the notion that an accused person should be presumed to be innocent.
It's going to be very interesting to see where these changes head. And Pauline Wright, always good to talk to you about criminal matters, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Pauline Wright there, the Chair of the Criminal Law Committee with the Law Society of New South Wales. And you might have some more views on that as well. 0467 922 684 if you'd like to join us. 0467 922 684. Something else we're talking about too today, later in the program, is using old typewriters. Remember the days you had to use old typewriters? Just got one coming through here. Saying what were some of the good things and some of the bad things about using a typewriter. We've got one, I haven't got a name on it sadly, but says typing too fast and jamming the keys. Oh, didn't that happen? And mixing letters. Yes. My sister always typed beginning for beginning. In other words, putting the G where the B should be. Or hitting too hard and completely cutting out an O. Yes, they all happen. Keep them coming. 0467 922 684. 0467 922 684. It's just funny listening to kids, a little cut asking kids how typewriters work.
How does it work?
I actually really don't know. Let's explore. I think you put a piece of paper in there and then or does it provide paper? I don't know.
Yes, they didn't quite know, but you may. I have some great memories of listening or using a typewriter. 0467 922 684. 0467 922 684. Rubbish, writes the caller earlier on, again, about bail laws. Again, interview police to get some actual examples of the problems. Well, it might be a little bit premature. The laws have only been changed as of today, and they only had a 6-week trial, so I don't know. Too early? It's surprising the pressure that comes from different sections and how quickly the government can act in some cases, isn't it? Might have some more thoughts on that. 0467 922 684. Well, look, with the focus over the last few days on the centenary of the start of the First World War, many families may be wondering about a grandfather or great-grandfather who enlisted during the wars, both the first and second, perhaps even later. What many families might not know is just how easy it is these days to find their relative's war record. Now, the National Archives in Canberra has digitalised a range of records, everything from immigration records to passenger lists to the war records for those who served in many of the Australian conflicts, and you can access them from home if you wish. And given the last few days' focus and the fact that it is National History Month at the National Archives, I thought we'd find out a bit more about what is in the archives and how you can gain access. And we've been joined this afternoon by Sean Rawlack from the National Archives, and he joins me on the line this afternoon. Sean Rawlack, good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, John. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, and good to be able to talk about this because it is National History Month. Do you think many people are aware of exactly what is available in the National Archives?
I think it's a case of discovery. Every time you put new ideas out there amongst the community, I think they're quite surprised to understand the scope of material that, whether it be the National Archives or State Archives, actually do hold in the collection. We're 40 million items and counting, with a fraction of that digitised, and in the immigration space, as you mentioned, millions of records in terms of immigration records, passenger records, and obviously extensive World War I related collection of records as well.
It's not only what you hold, though, it's the access, the easy access that is part of the archives now.
Absolutely. We're very focused on using the options within online facilities, websites, in digitising those records to make them more accessible, easier for people to interact with, and importantly, particularly around the World War I records, with a new site that has just gone live, Discovering Anzacs, that's still in testing with our users, the ability to work with communities and families, individuals, and actually capture their stories and their information around those official records.
Let's just touch on that, because obviously it's very current at the moment too, accessing, say, the First World War records. I've done that with my grandfathers, and it was absolutely fascinating to see what was available and to see how extensive they were. The archives were well and true, well, the records that were kept were quite meticulous.
Absolutely. We have some 370,000 of the World War I service records that have been digitised. They were, in fact, actually digitised in time for the 95th anniversary, and we've now developed a whole new site to host those, so that individuals can add their stories and their content that might have in their own collections at home that tell a bit more of the story around those individual servicemen and the sacrifices that they made. And we have other projects underway around that in exploring all of the medical repatriation records for World War I servicemen, which paints a whole new picture of the experiences and the sacrifices.
It is also interesting because people can find out where their relative went during the war too. They can find that they were posted, they might have been hospitalised, they might have had an R&R break, they might have been promoted or demoted. There's a whole range of things that are available on those records too, which makes fascinating reading.
It does, extensive information, and we're certainly encouraging the community to help us in identifying that content that's in the records. The new site is linked to a lifeline for those service people, which, as you noted, identifies when they enlisted and maybe where they went to serve. And we're asking for the community to help sort of document that information.
But as we've also mentioned, it's not just war records, for example. There's a whole list of other records. If somebody wants to find out more about their family, when they got here, how they got here, what they did once they did arrive, you've got those records as well.
Exactly. Extensive immigration records, passenger arrival records. We only this year collaborated with one of the genealogy groups, Ancestry.com, in indexing and digitising some 17,000 lists of passenger records for people that arrived through Western Australia, and that's added more than 3.5 million new names in digital format for people to be able to search through. So no, there's an extensive collection. How
labour intensive is it to get the records digitalised?
It is a time-consuming job. As I mentioned, we're sitting on some 40 million items in our collection. Only a fraction of that is digitised. It's an ongoing task that we have teams that work on an ongoing basis in a scheduled program, and also on demand as people request access to records. As part of that process of opening up the items, they're also digitised. So there's a passive program that supports that as well.
So comes a big question. How do people gain access to the archives?
They can come and visit us in Canberra, or they can visit any of our state offices, or as many people are doing with some 500,000 hits a year, is to go online to naa.gov.au and they can access extensive information about the collection, our exhibitions, education content. And I guess in keeping with the theme around Family History Month, we have some 300 fact sheets on the website, with particular ones that deal with tracing your family history and ancestors, birth, death certificates and so forth, and how to go about doing it, as well as a number of publications in our collection that would help people in accessing that information. And certainly if they came to the website, there's information there about National Family History Month, which is a collaboration with a network of family history organisations around the country that are running events all around the country this month in promoting an understanding of family history.
That is terrific, and it is great to be able to talk about it. And if people do want to go along to www.naa.gov.au NAA, National Archives of Australia.gov.au. Terrific to talk to you about it, Sean.